Haruhiro is your average League of Legends player who has canonically never taken a shower, but he has touched grass, so he has that going for him. We see him and his friend hunting goblins in the forest, but as you can tell by their distinct lack of skill, intelligence, and the fact that they are getting dogged on by a single goblin, it's clear that they have been forsaken by the plot armor gods. And it's not just these two either, they have an entire squad here, and they are still failing to jump a single goblin. Goblin Slayer would not approve. The leader is trying to rally the team, telling them that both they and the goblin are fighting for their lives, so the fight is not going to be won so easily. But honestly, the goblin just looks like he's messing with them, and Haruhiro here is self-aware and thinks to himself, "Damn, we really about to die to a goblin." Later on, we see Ronta waking Haruhiro up while he is still sleepy due to the exhaustive fight yesterday, and because of that, he misses his turn on breakfast duty, but the party gets along well enough, so they don't mind his mistake. As they all sit down to eat, the leader, Manado, brings up that they need to find a way to earn money since they haven't managed to kill a single monster yet, and that means that the goblin from yesterday still got away from them. These people arrive in Grimbera but have no memory of what happened to them beforehand or where they came from. They just appeared in a room a few days ago and couldn't remember anything from their lives. But all that considered, they are pretty calm and try to gather information about their current situations. But then again, since none of them know anything, they decide to ask the armored guards that have been standing there this entire time. Probably should have thought of that earlier. They get taken to a station where they are introduced to Brittany, who is the chief of the volunteer soldiers of Ortana. One guy, Renji, calls him out and tells him to explain why they are here already, also stating that he doesn't like Brittany because he looks like someone who diddles kids. Brittany gets up in his face and says people who accuse him of such things usually don't live long afterwards, but keep in mind he did not deny the accusations. Renji isn't threatened by the knife to his throat and gets Britt to leave him alone and starts explaining how things are going to go. If they join the volunteer army as trainees, they will be given 10 silver coins, which makes everyone realize that their wallets all say the same thing: broke. After that, Renji took all the people that looked strong and set out with them as his party, and the rest of the people there stuck together, including Haruhiro. They all had to spend 8 out of the 10 silver just to join a guild, and the guild which Haru chose to join was the Thieves Guild. While there, this woman jumps from the ceiling and puts him in an abdominal stretch. He explains that he is here to become a thief, and hearing this, she lets him go and says she'll train him personally. However, if he has objections, she could always get someone else to do it, but while he may have lost his memory, Haruhiro is a cultured man, and after looking at her one more time, he insists that she do it. He asks her whether he should call her teacher now, but she laughs and gets up close to him, saying thieves get nicknames, so after his training he'll get one for himself. But hers is Barbara, and right now, Haru is definitely thinking about what a great decision it was to come here. The party was now formed with all the members filling their roles, and later the next day they went out hunting again. As Yume scouts out 4 goblins, they know they are outmatched after they got their ass whopped by just one. But to add insult to injury, they are so poor that the goblins are eating food that is better than theirs. They go home with nothing to show for their day of work, but the next morning Manado was able to find a location which should be relatively easy for them to hunt goblins at, so they head out. They head there later that day, and Haru and Yume are able to find a single goblin, so they call the squad to gang up on it. The goblin is down by the river, so they start closing in on it, and it is looking like they've got a good position and are in great shape for their first victory. All they need to do now is not give themselves away, and of course, Ronta starts screaming at the goblin, giving away the element of surprise and forcing Yume to fire a shot to keep the goblin from escaping. Haru moves forward to attack while Ronta, well, he does whatever this is supposed to be. Haru has confronted the goblin, but as he is a thief, he is ill-suited to engage in close combat with a monster, so he is forced into Dark Souls mode and rolls around to evade the goblin. He distracts it long enough for Ronta to finally get his act together, but even though he is a warrior, he immediately gets sidestepped and bodied by the goblin. You know you suck at fighting when the priest has to come in and save your ass by smacking the goblin. The goblin lands on its feet and Shihoru fires a spell at it, but she sucks as well and misses a clear shot. They then tell Moguzo to attack the goblin, and they must have forgotten that they are meant to be dogpiling this thing because the rest of them are just standing around watching Moguzo work. The goblin jumps back from Moguzo and Ronta is finally able to land a good hit on its shoulder. The goblin starts to scream, scaring the others, so Ronta yells at them not to lose their cool over this, while also briefly joining the big forehead gang. They regain their composure and resume the coordinated mugging. And something spectacular happens. Shihoru actually manages to land her magic spell. We always knew you had it in you, more or less. The goblin is dazed, but as Haru tries to attack it, he gets a dagger thrown into his shoulder. However, before the goblin can kill him, he is able to stab it in the throat, allowing Ronta and Moguzo to kill it. They all celebrate their first victory, and Yume goes over to remove the dagger from Haru's shoulder. While they do this, Ranta goes over to get a body part from the goblin so they can get paid, but it turns out that the goblin isn't actually dead and gets up trying to escape. Ranta watches as his paycheck is running away from him, and there is no way he's going to let that happen, and so he chases it down and stabs it to death repeatedly, making sure it is dead for real this time, but is still pretty hard on them. They all go their separate ways to relax and calm down a bit, and as night rolls around, Ranta gets up from bed, because what anime would be complete without a peeking on the girl's bath scene? However, it goes about as well as you would expect. The next morning, the guys apologize to the girls on behalf of Ranta, but he is still standing there claiming to have done nothing wrong. He tries to pass it off as an unfortunate accident, but he falls for the classic trick of "I won't get mad if you tell me the truth." And after he tells the truth, she gets mad and slaps the pair out of him. After this incident, the girls are now avoiding the boys and refuse to even do much as look at any of them, even though Ranta was the only one to do the crime. The rain isn't letting up, so Haru and Yume head out into the forest to see if they can find some goblins to hunt, and while they do find some tracks, it is likely a group of 3, and they aren't sure they'll be able to handle that many. Yume doesn't seem to hold what Renta did against Haru and thinks she might have reacted differently if it were him, but tells him that what she just said doesn't mean he is free to go peeking on her either. They regroup with the others and return home, being unable to earn anything today or for the next few days after that. Without being able to earn money, they are still stuck in the damn "I'm broke" zone. So broke in fact that Haru can't afford a new pair of underwear, he has to wash them at night and then go to bed commando. As he leaves the laundry room, Shihoru enters and is still too shy to say anything to him, so he tells her she can go ahead and wash her clothes now. His mind then starts processing that if he has to go commando, then Shihoru probably does as well, and he tries to get peek. But common sense returns to him and he doesn't want to do something Ranta would do, and it's a good thing he stopped himself because Yume soon shows up and is still friendly to him, so he just excuses himself before leaving. Later on, the team resumes their hunting and heads into a city which was taken over by goblins a few years ago. While here, they come up with a genius strategy. Shank the goblin while it's sleeping. That should be way easier than fighting it normally as long as they do it properly. Damn, Ranta fucked it up again, but luckily Monado was there to help and the goblin was successfully killed. They celebrate their second kill in Grimgar and are finally starting to get the hang of this adventuring thing and have finally earned a decent amount of money. And you know what that means. Haru can finally get some new boxers. One morning, Monado is out feeding the birds when he notices Shihoru there as well and asks if she would like to feed them. She is still really shy around guys, so she declines at first, but Monado convinces her to try it anyway. However, as she's about to do it, she slips and falls, forcing Monado to have to catch her, embarrassing her and sparking the first possible romance which will definitely lead somewhere. Trust me. Later that day, the team goes out hunting again and they are finally looking like more of a party since can handle more than one goblin at a time. They've all learned new skills from their respective guilds, and that makes a huge difference in their combat capabilities. You may learn a diagonal slash skill because she still sucks at aiming with a bow, and Haru got a backstabbing skill. Shigoru is finally not missing all her spells, and Monado has acquired the most useful of all, the Holy Bonk. The party is finally making some decent profit, so they are now officially slightly less poor. They take a break to eat while they talk, and Yume begins rambling on about her hunting god and what it does in her dream, annoying Ranta, but amusing Monado, who is really happy to have such a great party to go on adventures with. Mogozo is the reliable tank that keeps their defense strong. Ranta is the loose cannon that gets them into a lot of trouble, but also helps push forward. Yume is the bravest of the group, and Shihoru is always aware of their surroundings when they fight. They could probably handle 4 goblins now with all the experience they've gained, but notice that Monado didn't mention anything about Haru. He was fine with it since he could just ask about it later, but things have been going well for too long now and shit is about to hit the fan. The goblins aim at Monado with a crossbow, but Haru notices it in time and pushes him out of the way, getting shot in the process. All this time they have been jumping goblins, but they never prepared for the day that they would get jumped. Monado takes Haru to shelter and begins healing his wound, but the others are being attacked by this absolute unit of goblin, and they are all forced to retreat. However, the goblin are on some next level hating when it comes to Monado because this one gets on a perch and aims at him again, shooting him in the back. Monado obviously felt the literal arrow in his back, but in order not to worry his teammates, he tells them he's fine and keeps going. They finally get away from the goblins, and this is when Monado collapses due to, once again, a literal arrow in the back. Probably should have mentioned it a mile back. They are all panicked and try to help him, but after all the running while wounded, he doesn't have enough strength left to heal himself and can do nothing but apologize to them for dying here. Monado was a good man. He probably should have at least said, "By the way, I got shot with an arrow before he ran out of stamina, but rest in peace regardless. Show him some love in the comments." The group rushes over to the church to find the head priest that has been training Monado, but when they ask for him to heal their friend, he says there is nothing he can do for someone that has already passed on. The best they can do for him now is to cremate his body so he doesn't go through the torment of becoming a zombie here. With a heavy heart, after cremating his body, they bury Monado's ashes and sit around the gravestone mourning his death. Ranta is the first to get up and walk away here, while Yume cries and the others just sit silent. It's finally sinking in for them that Monado was the one who kept them together, and now he's gone, they don't know what to do. Later on, Haru and Maguzo find Ranta drinking at a bar that Monado used to go to, and they sit down to talk to him for a bit. He says he is done with this whole volunteer soldiers thing because they were basically forced into it, and he sees no way they can continue now without Monado. The conversation gets a little heated, so Maguzo has to calm everyone down, but Ran's point still stands since they all know Monado was irreplaceable in the party. While they talk, a guy Kikoa, who was part of the group they first appeared here with, walks up to them. He used to drink here with Monado and asks where he is. The guys tell them that Monado died yesterday and he sympathizes with them. He tells them priests have one of the highest mortality rates here since monsters always attack them first, which is why he does everything he can to defend the priests in his party. But since Monado is gone now, all they can do is continue to push forward. However, without a priest in their party, they are sure to die sooner or later. But this is where Kikoa comes in clutch. He knows a bunch of people, so he could probably find a priest for them. However, before that, he has to ask them what their names were. I'm sure most guys understand the waiting for someone to say their name so he doesn't have to ask. But if he didn't ask now, he'd be stuck calling them Buddy forever. And with that, Mary was introduced to the party as their new priest. However, her personality is wildly different from Monado's, and since he has never been the leader before, Haru has no idea how to give directions. He says they will be going back to the Goblin Town for hunting, but their usual strategies no longer work because Mary never learned the Holy Bonk and she is not willing to go out to fight. She's a healer, so she will only heal, and on top of that, she won't heal you if she doesn't feel like it. In the bar, they talk about how Monado was such a big help to the team when all of a sudden, Renji shows up and walks over to their table. He says he heard that Monado dies, so he is here to offer his condolences and give them a gift, a gold coin. This is a huge amount of money considering that after all their work, the team has yet to accumulate up to 10 silver, and 1 gold is worth 100 silver. However, Haru doesn't want to accept charity, even if it is out of concern for a lost acquaintance, so he hands the coin back to Renji. He believes Monado would have wanted them to make their own money, but the way things have been going recently, the party's teamwork is not going to cut it. They haven't even spoken to either Shihoru or Yume since he died. Later that night, Haru goes to talk to Yume once she gets out of the bath and apologizes to her for not talking to her sooner. He blames himself for not having a better handle on the situation, but she tears up and tells him it's not his fault. They are all friends and they should handle things together, so he alone is not to blame. Haru breaks down, remembering Monado's last words, counting on him to take care of the team, and he and Yume embrace each other, promising to get along with everyone for the sake of the team. Now that was a touching moment and all, but as Shihoru is watching from her perspective, Yume's head is suspiciously close to Haru's pickle region, so she gets flustered and walks away while Haru is trying to tell her it's not what it looks like, and Yume just realized what Shihoru thinks happened. After explaining everything to her, Shihoru goes to apologize to Haru for misunderstanding the situation and assuming they were in some kind of relationship. Ranta jumps out of bed after hearing that and starts hounding Haru for information, but Haru maintains it was just a misunderstanding. However, Yume doesn't help matters by saying Haru was hugging her tightly while they were alone in the dead of night. They all later have breakfast in the courtyard, while they talk about the situation with Mary. Yume and Shihoru have both agreed to be nicer to Mary during their next outing, but Ranta still has a problem with her attitude. However, it wouldn't hurt if she would start fawning over him a little. For the first time ever, Maguzo is the one to give Ranta his reality check and tell him that Mary will never see him like that. They go to meet Mary, who was waiting for them to arrive, and as Haru greets her, she actually responds this time, showing that she's warming up to him a little. They get to the hunting, and this time things go more according to plan, and Mary actually heals Maguzo this time because she's okay with doing it after the fight is over. However, while things with her are better, she still isn't fully open to cooperating with the party. Later, the team heads to a bar and coincidentally they see Mary there as well, but she pauses for a second and looks at them before sitting somewhere else. Ranta complains that she didn't even say hello to them, but if you think about it, they didn't say hello either, so they can't really blame her for not approaching. While she sits, she gets approached by someone from a very well-known party. Later that night, Haru is feeling burdened by the weight of being a team leader, but remembering what Monado told him before he died. Haru resolves to do his best to keep the team together. On the next hunting trip, Haru puts more effort into observing his teammates and realizes that Moguzo is struggling to fight because he lost his helmet. Without it, a single hit to the head could kill him, so he is being more cautious than usual. Haru backs him up and afterwards says he'll help him get a new helmet later. The team gets into another fight and Ranta is handling some goblins when one goes after Shihoru. But luckily, Mary had also learned the holy bonk, so she was able to stop it. Haru thanks her for her help and asks if she would like to go grab something to eat with them. She is surprised by the offer, but hesitates a little and ultimately decides to not go with them, but she is much nicer than usual. Haru decides to go ask the person that was talking to her last time about her. Shinohara says if they are asking about Mary, then the best person to ask would be Hayashi since he used to be in her party, so he explains. They had a party in which Mary was the healer, and she was always pushing herself for the team and would jump in as soon as anyone had a scratch and heal them. But the party was young and overconfident, and once they came across a spotted kobold called the Death Spots, they foolishly challenged it and got themselves beaten, and at the time Mary had used up all her magic, so she ended up losing 3 of her teammates. She and Hayashi were the only survivors that day, and since then, she has never been the same. After that, she started going from party to party, but has never stayed with one group for long, so Hayashi asks them to take care of her. They now know a bit more about her past, but Ranta has no idea why any of that should matter. Are they supposed to be nice to her because her old teammates died or what? The same thing happened to them, yet she doesn't try to be nice at all. However, while what he said is true, Shihoru has to speak up and say they were all affected by Monado's death, so they should be a little considerate to her. You know it's bad when Shihoru has to speak up since she has only said like 5 lines of dialogue since they got here. Haru agrees with her, saying Mary won't treat them as friends if they don't meet her in the middle and do the same. But Ranta is a bit upset that Haru is going through all the effort to treat Mary as a friend while everyone always dismisses his opinions. Haru hadn't realized he had been doing that, so he promises to listen to Ranta more often, catching him off guard a bit. The next day, Yume and Haru are scouting out the goblins and spot one who is holding Haru's old dagger he dropped on the day Monado died. He nearly goes straight in to fight it, but Mary stops him because that would be plain stupid to do in this weather. He apologizes and decides to head back to the rest of the group that were chilling out in an old house. He tells them there were no good targets out there, so they should pack up for the day, but before they go, he has something he wants to tell Mary. She gets up expecting to be kicked out of the party with how strange everyone's acting towards her, but Haru just tells her the story of Monado and what he meant to their party. He had initially brought her in as part of the party just to fill Monado's role, but now he thinks of her as a friend and so does everyone else. As they leave, Haru invites her to hang out with them, but she says it's too soon for her to start acting as a friend, but she has really warmed up to them at this point. After that, things go really smooth with the party's relationship and Mary starts acting friendly with them. And with this newfound synergy, they slay goblins day in and day out, so much so that they're mocked by the others at the bar for it. They track the goblins, they think like the goblins, and they kill them with no mercy. Goblin Slayer now approves. They've also all got new skills, where Shihoru learned a sleep spell, while Ranta learned how to do a backstep from the enemy to create distance. Moguzo learned how to scream to the tune of that sound of nail on a chalkboard, incapacitating the goblins, while Yume learned how to not suck at aiming with a bow. And on the end of Haru, he's acquired a new ability that directs him to strike at just the right spot to kill an enemy, but he's not sure exactly what it is, so he'll have to ask Barbara about it later. In the abandoned building, the goblins are lounging around, and Yo is that goblin playing chess. Outside, the team is getting ready to begin their assault, and the first order of business is to take out the goblin's sniper, who Yume headshots immediately. With that taken care of, the team prepares to lay siege to the goblins that killed Monado. As Haru backstabs one of them, the others inside are alerted to their presence and get ready for battle. The team heads upstairs and are confronted by the goblins who came ready to fight. The leader sends out the beefy goblin to handle Moguzo, and the rest are handled by Ranta, while Yume and Haru take on the leader. These goblins are smart enough to understand the way humans fight, and even when Shihoru puts the beefy goblin to sleep, they are able to stop Moguzo from killing it and wake him up. And at the same time, Yume has just been stabbed by the goblin leader. Haru jumps in to save her, but he is not strong enough to take it out on his own, which is where Mary tags in to give him a helping hand with a holy head smash. Haru then jumps in to stab it in the stomach several times, so many times that I'm surprised he doesn't die from that. It knocks Haru off, but before Mary can jump back in, she remembers that Yume was stabbed and goes over to heal her. In that time, the goblin leader managed to escape despite the literal 12 stab wounds it has on its body. Meanwhile, Moguzo and Shihoru are still fighting the beefy goblin, and Moguzo is starting to get a bit worn out. Shihoru tries to fire a spell at it, but it dodges and Moguzo is out of juice, but Mary heals him and Shihoru uses her magic one more time to fire a spell at the goblin, and it actually hits. The revived Moguzo now uses this chance to strike the goblin straight through the floor. The rest of them finish up, and they all go to find the goblin leader who is sitting in a chair and looks to be barely breathing. Ranta is about to finish it off, but an arrow is fired and oh shit, here we go again. Mary got shot in the back and the leader goblin appears to have been acting as it gets up and tries to kill her. A second arrow is shot, but Haru puts himself in the line of fire and technically catches it. The others try to stop the goblin leader and Moguzo is eventually able to subdue it. They check on Mary expecting the worst, but she is still alive and able to speak, just in a lot of pain. Haru goes after the goblin that shot the arrow on the roof. It was this guy that shot Monado, so he chases after it and tricks it with his jacket, forcing one-on-one combat. He struggles a bit, but ultimately, he's able to kill the goblin and avenge Monato. They all later go to visit Monado's grave to say a few words about him and share that they finally become fully fledged volunteer soldiers. The next day, after all they accomplished, they all take the day off and go about their respective ways of relaxing in Grimgar, and later that evening, they meet up at a bar and have a drink, where they hear that there has been recent trouble in the abandoned city, where they usually hunt goblins, and goblins are ferociously patrolling the area now. And due to that trouble, it's not likely that they will be able to make any money the next time they go hunting there. Due to this, Moguzo suggests that they switch up their hunting grounds a bit, and Haru blurts out that the mines would be a good place to switch to, but he quickly backpedals after remembering that is the same place Mary's teammates died, and she may not want to go there. However, the other members of the team think it would be a good idea, and they can take precautions to avoid death spot. So since it is their only option right now, they agree to go to the mines. However, Mary gets up and says she needs a moment to herself. She runs out of the bar and Haru chases after her. By the time he catches up to her, she apologizes for running out on them, but Haru understands how she feels and why she is so averse to going into the mines, but she also realizes that she can't live her life without facing the past and moving on. While she knows she would never be able to go in there alone, it may be a different story if she went there with people she trusts, so she would be happy to go with them. But if they are going to take on the mines, they are going to have to be prepared for it. So Haru goes back to the guild to pay to learn a new skill, Spider, and as part of the training is experiencing the restrictions of the Spider technique. Or in other words, he is going to get suffocated by Barbara's thick thighs. After the first round, Haru is out for the count and can no longer continue, so Barbara takes a seat on him and tells him to tell her a story while he rests. He says he doesn't know any good stories, so she asks him to tell her about his love life. But that too has remained uninteresting. She can't believe he has gone 9 episodes and without a single romance subplot. There are even 3 girls in his party, so it's not like there is a lack of options. She grills him a little because there has to be at least one of them that he is interested in, but he soon changes the subject and asks about that strange ability he experienced before. Barbara recognizes it and says it's a good sign, but don't get it twisted. He's not some main protagonist or anything. That light is something anyone with a good level of skill will see once in a while. But to get it to happen more often, he will need to train more, and thus she resumes the 5 thrashing. The next day, they all head to the Cyrene mines, armed and ready. They enter and are engaged in combat where they employ their newly acquired skills. Yume can hit the kobolds with a throwing knife from a distance now, and all of Haru's spider training has paid off. Ranta also learned a new skill that causes your opponent to become confused, but while it is definitely useful, a confused enemy is the embodiment of never let him know your next move. After they are all done with the kobolds on this level, they get started with looting the bodies, and Mary explains that all kobolds have talismans on their noses, but the ones here aren't going to be worth much since the kobolds here are low-level scrubs. There are others of higher level the deeper you go into the mine, so they will have to be more careful as they descend. As they go, they find a group of kobolds sleeping, and Ranta thinks it'll be some easy loot and if they didn't want to dive and why sleep, but the others are largely against it and leave him monologuing about how great his philosophy is. They continue the hunt, and Shihoru uses her new spell to bind the kobolds to the ground, making them easy kills for the rest of the team, and Haru experiences that glowing line again. He understands a little more about how it guides him to strike in the most efficient way possible, but once it appears, he cannot change his breathing or hesitate for even a moment. His body must move on its own for the strike to be a success, and he manages to pull it off again. These kobolds were fairly easy to take down as well, but Mary cautions them not to get careless because from here on out, they will be facing elder kobolds who are much stronger and smarter. They use strategies and different tactics when they fight, so it's not going to be as easy as all the others. Haru worries that they are growing a bit too confident with how well things have been going, and he can tell that something bad is due to happen, so he decides they should pack it up and return to town for now. Ranta doesn't like the idea of quitting when they've been on a win streak, but he goes along with Haru's decision. Back in town, Haru thinks of how Ranta doesn't really get along with him or the others on the team, so that night he tries to have a talk with Ranta about his behavior. They head outside, but as Haru brings up Ranta's behavior, Ranta gets defensive. He's aware that he is not great at teamwork, but everyone has their weaknesses, even Haru, but he never complained about his shortcomings. He likes to do things his own way and will continue to do things as he wants. He then storms off and Haru is not sure what to do. The next day, as they return to the mines, Ranta is being a bit more aggressive and obnoxious with his actions than he usually would. It's starting to get on Haru's nerves, but he keeps his cool in order to avoid a big fight. They move down to the 3rd floor and find a field where they notice some kobolds in the distance. Ranta wants to run in and kill them, but it would cause a really dangerous situation if they did it too slow and allowed them to call for reinforcements. Just then, Ranta accidentally trips an alarm system that the kobolds created, and it alerts the kobolds to their presence. Mary is still calm and says their best option is to go down to the 5th floor since an open field puts them at a real disadvantage, but that calm demeanor flew out the window real quick once she heard a familiar set of giant footprints. It is Deathspot. We see a memory of Mary with her old party as she wakes up, and the leader says they should all head to the Cyrene mines today since a lot of other adventurers are also heading there as well. They all trust his judgment and follow him despite his pushiness, and Mary was really happy. But this is still just a flashback and she gets snapped out of it by her current team. She regains her composure and Deathspot passes by them without noticing. After he's gone, they all head down to the 5th floor to avoid any further confrontations, and as they descend, they can feel the temperature rising as this floor is used for melting metal. This is also the same floor that Mary's friends all died on, so she looks a bit distraught but says she is fine. They can't rest near the entrance, so Mary says they should go to a safe room that her party used to use when they came down here. They assassinate one of the kobolds to get past it and make their way to the safe room, but this is also the room where Mary's party met their ends, and consequently, since their bodies were never taken care of, they have all been reanimated as undead beings. Mary dreaded it, but she knew one day she would have to face them like this, so she learned the spell to undo the undead curse. But before she can use it, so Haru and the others need to hold them off. They engage in combat, but the undead are much stronger than them and have abilities that exceed the team's skill level, so they are having a hard time. But while Ranta is dealing with the thief, Haru and Yume struggle with the mage's barrage of fire missiles and a wall of fire in front of them. Mary leaps through the flames and casts the Dispel, hugging her friend goodbye as she turns to dust. With one down, Haru runs over to help Ranta, who immediately picks up on his intention and performs a team tactic to land a hit on the thief. In times like this, Ranta truly shines as Haru would never be able to win a fight like this one-on-one, but with Ranta, they are able to defeat it and allow Mary to perform Dispel. The last one is the tank that is currently fighting Moguzo, but Moguzo is greatly outmatched because, come on, the undead just did a triple front flip in the air. The skill gap is too wide. Luckily, the entire team is here to help out, and after disarming it, Mary is finally able to free her last friend from the curse. Mary has finally made peace with what happened to her friends, so she may be able to move on now, and the others are there to help her through it. They are all exhausted and can't wait to get home and relax, but again, things were going too well, and Deathspot bursts through a wall. And you can just tell by his face that he has been hunting them on demon time. It's personal. Haru nearly gets split in two immediately, but manages to deflect the attack at the last second, injuring his hand in the process, but managing to get away and tells everyone to run for it. They all run towards the exit and are chased down by all the kobolds in the area and Deathspot, who is chasing them like they insult his mama or something. It destroys the entire base just to get to them, and due to that, Haru almost falls back into the lion's den. However, Ranta manages to catch him and prevents his plummet, but as they are trying to escape again, Ranta falls and is left at the bottom, with no way to get back up. However, he yells for the others to get out of there while they still can while he faces the pack of kobolds. Ranta somehow manages to survive and escape back into the fields where he hides among the worm cattle things. And with all his flaws, you have to admit that Ranta is built different. He survived alone against Deathspot and 20 kobolds while Mary's team died with only Deathspot. The others made it to one of the upper floors, but obviously aren't going to leave Ranta behind. Even if they don't particularly like the dude, he is still a valuable member of the team and saved Haru, so they get ready to go back for him. Ranta gets spotted by one of the kobolds and alerts the others to his presence, forcing him to make a run for it despite his injuries. The others hear the commotion and realize it must be Ranta, so they hurry over to find him while he is currently cornered by Deathspot and is hobbling away with a broken leg. They finally find him and Yume fires some arrows to slow Deathspot down while Haru gets Ranta. Mary heals him and they all turn to run away. Once they are safe, Mary fully heals Ronta and he starts looking like he is about to cry. Yumini jokes about it a little, but Ronta was really scared that he would never get to see any of them again. However, you'll never hear him admit that. As they continue to the surface, Mary tells Haru that she is almost out of magic and that she would only be able to use one more heal, so he tells her to recover once they get to the entrance. But just when they thought they were in the clear, Death Spot returns. Seriously, what did they do to deserve this kind of chasing? Shikora uses up the last of her magic to attack, and Muguruza moves in as well, but Mary warns them that Death Spot grows stronger when he takes damage. Haru thinks their only option is running, but they would never be able to outrun this beast, so he makes the decision to drag it down with him and save the other. He leaves Ronta in charge and is half dead at the bottom of the cliff, but Ronta yells to him not to give up. It's a battle to the death, and one of them literally has death in its name, so Haru doesn't think he has much of a chance of living through this. He at least hopes that Mary will return to cast a spell on him after he is dead. As Death Spot prepares to attack, Haru notices the glowing lights and how everything is moving in slow motion. This is his last hope, so he follows it and manages to slash at Death Spot's last good eye. And upon landing, counters the strike Death Spot threw at him, splitting the sword and launching it back into Death Spot, killing him. Haru then collapses and wakes up to find Mary by his bed waiting for him to regain consciousness. He doesn't remember what happened to him, but Ronta throws him a sack of 30 gold, which was the bounty on Death Spot. That night, they all go to the bar to celebrate their victory and Haru's survival in the mines. It has now been a long while since he came to this world, and he still has no memories of what his past life was, but he is happy with the new home he has found here, and there are many more adventures to be had.